Where you are correct is that most retirees and most Americans do appreciate Social Security, do appreciate the entitlement programs that come with this country, whether it's Social Security, Medicaid, Medicare, no doubt. But that doesn't mean the government is good at spending money. We're seeing that Social Security is about to go bankrupt.
The trust fund is going to be
the trust fund by 2023. And yes, I just had this conversation literally 2 days ago in D.C. where he kept using the word bankrupt. I said, what does that mean?
Who kept using that word?
This was
Which Republican used it?
It wasn't even a Republican. He was sort of a Social Security financial advisor, expertise type of guy.
I mean, I was making a lot of money.
Now, how comfortable at that point would you have been paying 90% in taxes?
Sure.
So you actually want to pay 90% in tax?
No.
But why would anyone want to?
You know why I'm laughing? Because it's always let's tax the people a little richer than me. It's always let's.
In this one, we're going to have a look at Patrick Bet-David having a debate with Sam Seder over Social Security, government spending, and taxation of people and companies that make over $3 million a year. Sam Seder's the type of guy that is okay with a 90% tax rate on companies that make over $3 million a year. And Patrick Bet-David, who makes a lot of money, I'm sure is completely against that. So this is a good debate. I wish Vinny was in the studio for this one, but unfortunately he's not. But Patrick Bet-David does a good job handling Sam Seder in this one. I know you're going to enjoy it. I sure had a great time making it. So let's just go ahead and check her out.
Money was so freaking cheap for so long that we have to pay a price for it. And now you're looking at the economy. It looked like everything was good, but a big part of it was fake, Sam. We had a lot of fake success the last few years.
Well, I mean, look, I'm just measuring on, again, the way I view things is what's going to make things better for the most amount of people. And in terms of it being in favor of the capitalists, I would also change our tax policy. So, I mean, I would claw some of that back, quite a bit of it back.
What would you do?
I would return to the tax policy when we had the greatest, sort of the widest economic expansion shared by more people as a percentage of our population than any other time in this country, which was in the 50s and the 60s. And I would return to the tax rates more or less there. So your top tax rate at that time was 90%, top marginal rate, for every dollar over $470,000 you would earn. So that would be equivalent to around $3 million today. I think we should return to that type of tax
You want it
scheme.
to go as high as 90% at the top marginal tax
At the top marginal tax rate. So understand, that only kicks in with every dollar above $3 million.
I hear you. And
yeah.
I mean, that's the famous Reagan situation where I think it was anything over $200,000 at that point. This might have been in the 40s, that he would only do 2 movies a year because he'd get paid $100,000 per movie, and then he wouldn't even do a third movie because he would only get 10% of the revenue because he's like, fuck it, I'm not doing another movie.
Yeah.
So wouldn't that curb growth?
When Reagan started telling that story,
Yep.
You know who he was working for when he started telling that story, right? He was going around, I think it was working for GE, trying to convince people not to get Medicare for all. I mean, if Reagan could have gotten 3 movies or 5 movies, he would have done it. He was working with chimps. He would have been happy to do that for his career. Believe me. Believe me.
I knew it. Typical Democrat. Tax the rich. I'm sorry, but the rich are what pay the majority of the taxes at this point, as it is. I don't like this concept that the Democrats keep bringing that says we need to tax the rich their fair share. Look, they're the ones that put their money on the line. They're the ones that assume more risk than the majority of Americans. They don't deserve to be paying a higher percentage of their income to taxes. Hypothetically, if they were to cut back their earnings because they're tired of paying taxes, especially if it gets to a certain amount, and then over that amount they jump to the next bracket and then they basically make nothing. I'm hearing 90%. That's an incentive to not work. That's an incentive to basically halt production. That does not cause economic growth, and that allows our enemies on the world scale to gain on us. How is that productive? How does that help Americans? In that process, it would cost tons of Americans their jobs. They would go straight on unemployment, and then that's just more government suck. Get out of here, dude. I hate these woke lefties that think that we just got to tax the rich more, especially when they don't accompany that along with the people who are spending the money, our government, should be spending more wisely. Just like anything else in life, be responsible with what you have already on your plate, and then maybe we can talk about giving you more. But for now, they're just spinning us into oblivion, and our debt goes higher and higher and higher. I get it's just kind of monopoly money at their point, but when it comes to you and I paying taxes, that's real hardcore assets that we could use in a better method to benefit our own lives directly. They want to talk about universal health care. Well, if I had more money in my pocket, I could get my own health care. I don't need the government-funded universal health care. So get out of here with that nonsense, man. I don't like this guy already.
What's the top marginal tax rate right now? 39%? What is it
I think
right
it's
now?
37, 39%.
You're in favor.
I will say this, though, just to finish up that Reagan story. I will say this to you. I remember being in L.A., and taxes top line had hit whatever the all-in was, 57.5. I don't know what the number was, around 57.5. You live in Brooklyn. So 57.5%. People are like, what the hell is going on here? There was this girl who was a top realtor in the San Fernando Valley area, one of the top realtors. Her picture was on all the benches. Everywhere you would go, you would see her. And she was one of the realtors making very good money. She's making $500,000 a year income, doing good for herself, whatever the number was, $400,000, $500,000. One day, I stopped seeing her pictures on the seats. And I'm at Wood Ranch with my wife, and I said, hey, you're the girl, right? She says, yeah, I am. She's with her husband and her 2 kids. I said, what happened? We haven't seen you lately. She says, it's so funny you ask. My husband and I made a decision that the moment taxes got so high, it was more important for me to be stay home. It wasn't worth me working to pay this much in taxes. So there's a part of what he's saying. Yeah, whether he's going to do the movies with chimps and all that stuff. But there's a part of it that kind of incentive needs to be there.
America would not have suffered by the lack of Ronald Reagan movies. And I would
Okay,
also argue, I would also argue that, like, I guarantee you there was no less houses that sold because that one particular broker stopped selling houses at a certain point.
Simple-minded simpleton. That is not the point. We're not worried about how many houses are selling. We're worried about people's income, setting up for their retirement, things like that. When people choose to leave the workforce because all they're doing is paying taxes, that is not a good thing.
So are you on YouTube and Rumble or just YouTube?
I'm on YouTube. I think we put it on Rumble. I think we're also on Twitch, and
all over the place. Okay, so let me ask you this question: if YouTube took their AdSense from 55 to 15, would you continue creating content?
Yeah.
You sure?
Sure.
You'd continue creating content.
I wasn't doing YouTube for a long time.
How do you make a living today?
I have membership. That people pay. I get ad revenue from different places.
Okay, so let's just say the membership that you get from Patreon or whoever it is. Okay, what if their fees went from them keeping 5% to 60% to 90%? Would you continue creating content?
I mean, I would probably have to cut back if there was that.
Exactly.
Well, but that's only because it's such a big change.
No, because that's the part about incentive, Sam. So your audience gets to enjoy you.
I'm not saying we'll cut the revenue for these businesses. I'm saying that the amount of
you
money...
have no choice, though, because you're paying these guys. You need the revenue.
No. I'm not suggesting we cut revenue for businesses. What I am suggesting is after that revenue comes in... and we divvy up and I have my net profits, then my taxes would go up. But I will say this, like if, let's say, the taxes went up on me personally, would I stop going on YouTube? No.
So would you be able to scale it how many employees you got working for you right now?
I'm not talking about cutting revenue,
I get that. How many employees are working for you right now?
We have payroll, I think, like 6 or 7
Okay, you got
people.
that's a small business you got there, right?
Sure.
6 or 7 people. Okay. If all of a sudden AdSense went up, the fees for your Patreon, I don't want to offend you when I say Patreon. I don't know who you use. Whoever you use that's got your membership stuff, if they raised
They take less than Patreon.
If they take 50% all of a sudden, and they say YouTube says AdSense goes to 15%, would you be able to employ those 6 people?
No, if my well, I don't know, but probably
maybe that's because you're rich.
No, probably not. But I'm not suggesting that we cut revenue for businesses. I'm suggesting that what is left over from revenue, if it's over $3 million that goes into the pocket of the owner of this enterprise, that $300,000,001
Yeah.
gets taxed
Let's
at
have fun with this.
90 cents.
Let's have fun with this. So here's a question for you. And I kind of know what your answer is.
And I want to be clear on something.
Yeah.
I'm doing this. I subscribe to this not because I think that we need the money or that this is going to, be a panacea in terms of like how we would spend this money.
Yeah.
But I see in this country a massive problem with wealth inequality and the commensurate political inequality that comes with it. We have wealth inequality in this country like we've never had before.
I don't disagree. So there's not a disagreement there. But the solution is where we're going to disagree. So let's kind of process that together. Okay. So the whole thing, like I remember when I first got out of the military and I went into the financial industry, it's 1999. I know nothing. It's 2000. I know nothing about it. The speaker gets up. Wow, have you been noticing that the rich keep getting richer and the poor keep getting poor? I'm like, okay, my dad's at a cashier at a 99-cent store 15 years. My parents got divorced twice.
I hope you said to that guy, you ain't seen nothing yet.
Yeah.
Wait till 20 years
but you're
from now.
right,
It's going to be completely out of control.
But you're right, though. But why is the question? So here's a question for you. So you're saying above $3 million, that money that the owner's going to keep, we got to tax them 90%. Fine. Okay. So you believe the money, like when I was in the military, you would buy a product for the Humvees, and they would say, yeah, we pay $600 for this piece. We're like, dude, this piece is $40.
Right.
Why the hell are we paying $600 for? Well, the contracts. You know how they are, man. The government always pays a lot because they're dumb. They always pay more than it's usually worth.
And where does all this come from? How do you get funding for something like this? You don't actually think they spend $20,000 on a hammer, $30,000 on a toilet seat, do you?
Usually worth. A $40 piece for a Hummer, they're paying $600. I'm like, that's an awesome business for the other guy.
Yeah, we have horrible oversight in the military.
But this is the point, though. This is the point. And I want to actually sincerely get your thoughts on this, on how we address this. So if somebody overpays for a product, that person's either got to be fired or they're an overspender or a terrible negotiator. But it's one of the three, right? Okay. So you feel money going to the government we do more good with, or money staying in the free market for people to produce more value? Where do you feel values produce more?
Well, I'm not. I'm not sure I fully get what you're saying, but let me put it in this way.
It's a very serious.
Look, man, if you don't understand that concept, that question, then why are you involved in this conversation? Because that was plain and clear. Patrick Bet-David did not stutter when he asked you, is the money better off in the hands of the government or in the better hands of the people?
This way.
It's a very serious, simple
Okay.
question.
Well,
I want it to be clear.
Let me make it a little bit more concrete.
Yeah.
So you guys know that the biggest part of the budget, more or less, is Social Security and Medicare, right?
And Medicaid, yeah.
And Medicaid.
Entitlement programs.
Yeah, you can call them entitlement programs.
They are,
I call them social insurance programs because
Tomato.
that's what they really are.
That's 90% of the budget, I want to say.
No, the military is about $850 billion. Social Security is like $1.7 trillion. I think Medicare is probably close to like $700 billion.
It's about 60%.
And then there's other. But
more.
It's a high number. It's a big number. You're right. It's a high number.
You'll find that it's. I think our annual budget is somewhere around like $2.7 trillion, and the military is like 800 billion, 900 billion. That you can see anyways that they show us.
Yeah.
But nevertheless, Social Security, Medicare, the two biggest things that the government does are wildly popular. Medicare, you come from the insurance business, you probably know this. To administer health insurance, there's like 15% cost in the administration of that health insurance. For Medicare, 3%. Far more efficient. And copays are less. The whatever you want to call it, consumer satisfaction. I don't like to think of citizens as consumers, but the satisfaction's huge through the roof, particularly when people use it. It's people appreciate it who don't use it. If I got my parents, they're on Medicare, I'm pretty psyched about it because I don't have to take care of them. My mother's in a nursing home now. It's Medicaid that's doing that. I'm not responsible for that cost. Social Security through the roof. In fact, I think even a majority of Republicans want to expand
But
Social Security.
popular is not a way to qualify something. If I
No,
went
I
out
mean,
there and
it's
I
customer
gave,
satisfaction.
if I went to high school and I said, guys, I'm giving dime bags to everybody weed, I'd be a very popular kind of high school. So that is a wrong way to qualify.
You said efficiency.
Yeah.
Medicare, 3%
Right.
administrative costs versus 15%.
That's like the kid that's running for class president who's like, every Friday we're throwing a pizza party.
Well, if
he's
you
going to get
could-
everybody's vote.
if
But
you could
who's
provide-
paying for the pizza party? Sam?
Well, workers. In fact, I would argue that we should be actually removing the cap on Social Security taxes because right now, it goes only up to $160,000, right? There's a cap. Traditionally, Social Security has captured or touched 91% of the country's income. You follow me? And now it's somewhere down in like the mid 80s because of wealth
Yeah,
inequality.
but your argument on the flip side of it, the argument can be as well to say, well, at the beginning when they came out with Social Security, there was only a few thousand people in America that was actually using it. It was not meant to be for as big of a behemoth
Are
of
you
what it
kidding?
is today.
No,
It
that's
kept
true.
2/3 of our elderly out of poverty. It keeps 2/3 of our
didn't-
elderly.
But nobody's
out of
that's
arguing the
no one-
benefits of
That's not
Social
the argument,
Security.
though. That's not the argument. The argument is, originally when it came out, it wasn't for
Well,
the
they couldn't.
bigger percentage.
You had to wait. You had to wait until you build up the
you
funds.
didn't have to. You had to have capitalists work and overtax them to be able to fund it. That's what you had to do. But let me go back to
I
the
think
question.
what you are saying, just to validate your point, I think at that point, this is FDR back in the day.
we can pull up the data. That's
I think
not
there was
a-
40 workers for every retiree. I think now it's closer to like 3 workers.
Yeah, it's not
Yes, but
sustainable.
So it's not even
productivity-
close.
No. It is sustainable.
You think it's
No,
sustainable.
I don't
not
think it's sustainable. I'm looking at the Social Security Trust Fund actuarial
with the
tables.
letter when they sent you this in the Social Security letter.
Let me cut in real quick there and tell you about my proposal to save Social Security because I think it's important, especially since I've paid into it my whole entire life, over 20 years, 25 years, and I want it to be there when it's my time to get my piece. And so my solution is every time our government leaders sign off on these bills, they propose these giant stacks of bills that they can't even read through, which should be illegal for them to sign or vote for a bill that they haven't read every single word of, but that's a whole nother story. But when they go off and sign these bills to give billions of dollars, tens, hundreds of billions of dollars in foreign aid to other countries like Ukraine, it should be a requirement that 10% of that bill goes immediately into Social Security every single time. A requirement. If you're going to send $40 billion over there, $4 billion goes directly into Social Security. It might not completely cure the issues that we have with Social Security, especially with the way that the Democrats are trying to basically give every single illegal immigrant that comes to our country a free pass to citizenship and eventually, ultimately, have them receive the same Social Security benefits that you and I receive, even though they could come over into our country at 40 years old or 45 years old or 50 years old and then still receive the same benefits. Makes no sense to me, considering they haven't put in on this like the rest of us have. But that part aside, every single time they want to go and send money overseas for this or that, 10% goes straight into Social Security. It should be non-negotiable, and it's an example of how these people, our leaders, our elected people that are supposed to be looking out for us first, can at least show some incentive that they care about us rather than just handing our tax dollars over to other countries, right? I don't know if that's something that you guys would agree to or disagree with, but let me know in the comments because I haven't heard anybody else say this. And I've actually even posted this to Matt Gaetz and some of the other leaders on X. And, of course, you don't get any response or anything like that. But I wish they would look out for our retirement. I wish they would prioritize it as much as they want to prioritize things like abortion and healthcare and some of these other things that seem to always be the main talking points. And yet they just pass the buck on Social Security. They always want to up the retirement age. Nobody ever strives to lower the retirement age. I mean, heaven forbid they drop the retirement age a year or two so that people could actually retire earlier and enjoy a little bit more of their life without being burdened by working all the time. But I'm just a dude talking into a microphone, so what do I know?
They're telling you if we go this way, this is going to go bankrupt.
No,
in the
no,
letter.
no. You're misreading it. The trust fund is going to go bankrupt. In 1981, Greenspan and Reagan expanded the trust fund. We had a surge of baby boomers. There is a trust fund that exists that is essentially like a rainy day fund. That is going to be insolvent around 2033.
2033.
30,
sorry.
10 years. You are correct. I
Yeah.
just had this conversation
Yes.
past week.
However,
that's not a concern. That's not a concern. That's not a concern.
it is a concern. It will cause 20% in cuts to our
Right.
benefits.
Okay.
But that's it, period. Now, the way that we can get rid of that 20% in cuts in this Social Security Trust Fund is to do what I'm suggesting. Remove the cap so that every dollar you make, even above $160,000,
Yeah,
is taxed by Social Security.
Sam-
And then your kids
Yeah.
will be long dead before that
Well,
trust fund is out.
hopefully, if I raise my kids right, my kids won't need to be supported
If they
by the
don't
government.
need to be,
Yeah.
if they don't
So-
need that social insurance,
Yeah.
look, I mean, how can you, as an insurance guy, how can you not understand this?
No,
I don't sit around saying like, I hope that I don't need my fire insurance. I hope I don't. If your kids don't need Social Security,
Yeah.
old age insurance, then you know what?
But I
we
also
will tax the money back.
I am better for society. I am better for society if I find ways to get people off of needing any of this stuff than to rely on it more and more and more, because I'm truly hurting those who are creating commerce. That's who I'm hurting. But let me go back to my
Hold
question.
on for one second.
Wait a minute.
We had an experiment with
But
this.
wait a
Hold on,
minute.
let me just
Let me
finish
ask
the
the
Social
question
Security
for you. Let me ask the question. You still haven't
401ks.
answered my question for me. No, wait.
401ks with
you
a
still
private solution.
You still haven't answered my question. Let me go back to the question to you. So
Okay.
my question at the beginning, you have not yet answered. Okay. When you said, I would go back to the old tax system and I would take you to the 50s and 60s where we had a 90%. Okay. And I asked you a question. I said, who do you think produces more value? I gave the example of the Humvee, the pieces in the Army, how much we were paying, $600, but the piece was only $40. And the government tends to overspend because they're reckless spending. They're not really held accountable. Does money going in free market create more value, or money going to the government create more value for people?
Explain to me what you mean by value.
Okay, so value to me is, if I can give money to free market and lower taxes where they can go create more jobs, more opportunities, is that better for us long term, or is it better for us to raise taxes, to take away incentives, and give that money, tax money, goes to politicians to make decisions what to do with the money? Are politicians better at making decisions on what to do with our money, or are we?
I mean, I guess on in a broad way, I would say if we're going to look at the biggest chunk of money in the government to make this assessment, right? $1.7 trillion, Social Security. And we can compare it to the one sort of like comparable thing in the private sector, and that's a 401k. I would have to say, I mean, just based upon the way you've set up this question, that obviously the government, because Social Security has been the single most effective program that we have in this country. It has kept 2/3 of our senior citizens out of poverty as a social insurance program. 401ks have been a disaster. They've been a disaster. Just Google right there in front of you, the 401k experiment. People took the money out. I mean, and grant you, you can make an assessment that these individuals were stupid or immoral or whatever it is. I'm looking at the goal of keeping senior citizens out of poverty. The government has been able to do that far more effectively. 2/3 of our seniors are in nursing homes because the government is paying for it. And the point is that there are some jobs that the government does better because the value there is not measured in terms of actual sheer dollars. It is measured in, essentially how much immiseration are you inhibiting people from suffering? Well, listen, the numbers don't lie. 3% administrative costs for Medicare.
Can I just make I appreciate some of the points you're making. I do think that you're kind of conflating a couple different things. I think to Pat's question, whether the government is better at spending your money or whether the private markets or private companies are better, it's not even close. If private companies
what do you mean
ran
by
up,
spending money, to buy soda, or to actually just direct it in a way that keeps less people from suffering?
Okay, we have $31 trillion in debt right now. I think that's evidence enough, Sam, that we're not so good at spending money here in America.
It sounds like we're really good at spending money.
Well, we're not good at
managing money is a better word. Yeah.
Okay, there's a difference between being frugal and being smart with your money and just being wasteful. The government is clearly fucking wasteful. Where you are correct is that most retirees and most Americans do appreciate Social Security, do appreciate the entitlement programs that come with this country, whether it's Social Security, Medicaid, Medicare, no doubt. But that doesn't mean the government is good at spending money. We're seeing that Social Security is about to go bankrupt.
No,
the next 10 years.
trust fund is going to be
the trust
insolvent.
fund by 2023. And yes, I just had this conversation literally 2 days ago in D.C. where he kept using the word bankrupt, bankrupt, bankrupt. I said, what does that mean?
Who kept using that word?
This was
Which Republican used
it
that
wasn't
word?
even a Republican. He was sort of a Social Security financial advisor, expertise type of guy. But I said, what do you keep saying bankrupt? Is that meaning that retirees will not be receiving benefits? He goes, no, they'll probably be slashed by 25%. You use 20. So we can, cut the baby in half here. But how familiar are you with the three-legged stool of retirement?
Of course, yes.
Okay, so it used to be you had three avenues to retire. You had pensions, which do they even exist anymore for
They
90% of people?
more as a defined contribution than defined.
They're not very
benefit.
popular these days. I don't know how many
Correct.
people here have pensions. You have Social Security, which was never meant to be a retirement program. It was an insurance policy if you live too long, which basically Americans are now. Or you have your personal savings, which is the 401k. We can argue the merits of 401ks and Roth IRAs, what have you. But Social Security should not be keeping Americans afloat for 30 years of their life.
Well, that's,
And that's
a
the
failure of
problem.
the private industry, isn't it?
Why is it a failure of the private industry?
Well, I mean, Social Security is maintained. The idea that we're leaning on the government stool because the other two have failed. That's a function of private industry.
Isn't that a function of just the average person understanding how money works and saving money, investing and doing it properly,
I don't
versus
know.
the
You've
government
got,
or
what,
institution?
60% of the country lives paycheck to paycheck. How are they supposed to save this money?
Well, how are they spending their money? I guess is the biggest question. How many people have credit card debt? How many people? You just said when you took out a mortgage, you said, I'm an actor. What was the rate? You're like, I don't fucking even know. You should know.
Well, I was making so much money that
I don't give a shit how much money you're
guy.
making, Sam. You should know what your mortgage rate is.
But I didn't remember what it was in 1998, but I mean, I know what it is now. But I mean, but I was making so much money. But I was making, I was in the top. I don't know if I was in the top 1% at that time, but probably pretty close.
So let me ask you a question.
And
then.
I was a single guy who had just gone from making to $22,000 a year to all of a sudden making that.
How much were
in
you
less
making
than a week?
at that point?
I mean, I was making a lot of money.
Now, how comfortable at that point would you have been paying 90% in taxes?
Sure.
So you actually want to pay 90% in taxes?
No. Let's
Why
be,
would
let's
you
be
want
clear.
that?
I think it should be 90% over for every dollar you make over $3 million.
Yeah.
That would not have impacted me at that time. But I would have been happy to pay more taxes.
But why would anyone want to
You know why I'm laughing? Because it's always let's tax the people a little richer than me. It's always let's tax
Well, it was
the guys
a
that
lot richer.
Well,
But I'm just going
not
back.
That, not
no,
that.
but I'm
If
just
you're,
doing-
if you're saying 20,
I'm just going back
if you're
to
saying
what-
22
what-
a week, you were
I'm just
making
looking-
$1,098,000. That's a lot of money.
No.
for making $1 million.
Well, it wasn't 20.
You said 22 a week. That's $1 million a year.
No. That was the year before. I mean,
But you're making money. Let's just.
I was making a bunch of money. But I'm just going back to when we had the Great Compression, which was when we had the least wealth inequality in this country.
Mm-hmm.
We had the GDP was consistent with where on our trajectory, but it was spread out. It wasn't like this. Essentially, it was more spread out. It's called the Great Compression, and I'm just using that figure. I mean, look, if it's going to be 85% over 3 million or 85% over 4 million, I'm just basing it on what was the most successful economic era of this country.
Why not do 90% over $250,000?
I mean, if the numbers bear it out, I'm agnostic as to that. Again, I'm just pegging it on when we had the most success in this country in terms of our economy.
I appreciate that you're pointing out the success, but right now the top marginal tax rate federally is 37, 39. Okay, you do realize how shocking it is to say, all right, rather than go from 37 to 39, yeah, how about 40?
How many
How about
people-
50?
how many
You want to
people-
go to 90?
How
say.
many people do you
90.
assume? How many people do you assume would be touched by that tax? Would be implicated?
Top
by it?
1%.
I
Look at this number right here. Share of total income
less.
taxes paid.
Less.
The top 1% in this country pay 42.3%. The bottom 50% only pay 2.3%. So 150 million people are paying nothing in taxes.
Right.
And you want to keep the 1% paying more and more and
I think
more
it's
and more?
actually even less than 1%, to be honest with you. I think we're talking about 0.05%.
Sure,
But let's tax them even more.
Oh, I specifically want to make it illegal to be almost as wealthy as you. Not quite, but a little bit more. Like I want to make it not illegal. You're not going to go to jail.
So nobody can be no billionaires. No billionaires in America.
Absolutely.
Sam, that's-
100%.
Why? Don't you want America
I'll
to
give
be
you
known
an-
for greatness, for innovation, for capitalism, for,
I want-
for all the
my
amazing things that we've done in this country?
My definition of
You want to
greatness-
go to like Nordic socialism?
my definition of greatness is different from yours.
Patrick Bet David is about to lose it right there. He just got done calling out Sam Seder for saying, you guys always want to tax people that make just a little bit more money than you. And then not 2 minutes later, Sam Seder says, I want to make it illegal for people to be just a little bit more rich than you are. And Patrick Bet David, you could tell he just wants to bust out. He already is a little bit, but man, that's funny. And so I got to disagree with Patrick Bet David on one point that he made about Social Security. I don't care how rich a person is. I think they should take Social Security when it becomes their time, especially if they paid into it for their whole life. It's not taking from the government. It's receiving back what you paid in on the front end. I paid Social Security when I was 15 years old working at Taco Bell all the way till, now, and I will continue. And that's basically, in my opinion, a loan. That's me trusting the government to put my money in a savings account and invest it properly so that I can have it back when it's time for me to stop working. So regardless if I make $200 a month or $10,000 a month or $2 million a month, I want my Social Security back when it becomes time for me to get it. And some people may think that's greedy, but I don't care. I don't like giving the government a free handout when I pay Social Security my whole life and taxes and everything else. I want what's mine. I want that little bit that's supposed to come back to me. So, good for Patrick Bet David and those that are like, well, I'm going to make my kids rich enough to where they're not going to have to worry about it. Great. That's not the majority of us. And when it comes to a 401k, I believe there's more pros than there are cons. Yes, sometimes people have to take a loan and pay high interest when it comes to, getting money out of their 401k early. But people don't do that just for the fun of it. They do that because they need it. And if people need it, then they should be able to get it, even if it means paying more taxes on it, which sucks. But, that's the penalty. And so you could say that it's a failed experiment, but I don't think that it is. I think the way that it's set up, if followed through to fruition, is perfectly fine, as long as the stock market's not ruined by some jackass, right? But this final concept that he said there about taxing 90% on businesses that make over $3 million a year or whatever, you know what that's going to do? That's going to create more situations for Democrats like this guy, Sam Seder, to come after billionaires like Donald Trump when they diversify their assets into multiple companies that make $2.9 million a year instead of having one company that can make $9 million a year. They have 3 companies that make $2.9 million a year. You see what I'm saying? And then they're like, oh, he cheated on his taxes because this, and that. It just sets up this whole shitstorm that I'm not a fan of. It's more red tape, and it's more opportunities for people like him to call out people like Donald Trump, which, maybe that's what he's in it for. He wants to try to go after people like Elon Musk and Donald Trump, these billionaires that are fighting on the other side of what he politically believes. So, I don't know. I think I'll go ahead and leave it there. This one was rather long. I appreciate you guys watching to the end. If you did, I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, make sure to hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, share this video, and, leave me a comment. Let me know what you think about my whole Social Security proposal when it comes to 10% goes immediately into Social Security if we want to send money overseas, that type of stuff. I really appreciate you guys, and I'll see you in the next one.